Muted. Muted. Muted.
All right, everybody, we will get started this morning. I think we have a quorum of people online, and those that join late can join in. My name is Jonathan Hamilton, and I'm the president of Point Alliance. We are pleased to be joined by Jan Crowe, our director of consulting services, SQL Server Microsoft Database Business Intelligence expert this morning. It's a long title, but Jan does it a great service. So she has some great content for you this morning. SQL Server 2016 was released just earlier this month to the public, and we've had a lot of interest from clients curious as to what the new features and functions and reasons to upgrade would be, and hopefully you find this an interesting and informative session as Jan takes you through some of the highlights. And again, we are more than happy to field questions at the end of the session, or if you have things that you would like more detail on, again, happy to follow up with you post-session as well. So without further ado, I will pass you over to the lovely and charming Jan Crowe. Jan, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jonathan. So welcome, everybody, to the Microsoft SQL Reporting Services 2016 webinar. Essentially, the amount of development and the number of new tools that Microsoft has provided for BI and data analytics is absolutely staggering this year. Today, we are focusing on the new and mobile-friendly version of reporting services. During this webinar, we'll review the platform and its new and updated tools. Microsoft's goal is to provide a complete end-to-end reporting platform that allows you to provide access to basically information online and offline through your mobile devices. You can deliver insights with a convenient and interactive experience that's also optimized for mobile devices, and also ensure a great user experience across devices with the native app support, as well as the new web portal. So reporting services has been around for many versions of SQL Server, for those of you who have ever seen it before. But the advancements until now have really been minimal and limited to additional visualizations and small updates to the report builder application. With 2016, some significant advancements have been made with this platform, and let's take a look at what's new. The SQL Server, as Jonathan mentioned, was released to the general public earlier this month, and it was specifically released on June 1st. With that release, we now have a new web portal that you can custom brand for your organization. It also has additional objects on the dashboard, such as KPIs and mobile reports. You can also upload Power BI desktop applications and Excel workbooks to that same web portal. Mobile reports can be viewed online and offline on your mobile device. Mobile reports also support mobile drill-through, and we'll spend the majority of our time today reviewing the new dashboard, KPIs, and mobile reports. There are several new tools available, and these tools are for developing reports and KPIs. The new tool for building mobile reports is called Mobile Reports Publisher, and we'll take a look at that later. Report Designer is an updated report development environment with business intelligence templates for SQL Server data tools for Visual Studio 2015. Data tools used to be known as the Business Intelligence Development Studio in some earlier versions of SQL Server. And Report Builder has also been updated with an improved user interface to create paginated reports and shared data sets. The traditional paginated reports have been modernized to include some new visualizations that we'll take a sneak peek of, and a new parameters interface that we'll also take a look at. Also now available is Power BI Desktop with Excel workbook storage and report embedding. So we'll take a little bit of a look at those tools shortly, but let's have a look at the new web portal. With this new modern web portal, you can view all your reports, both mobile and paginated reports, in one place. It's designed from the outset for modern browsers, including Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Explorer, and Edge. It was built from the ground up, and it was built on HTML5. So as you can see on screen that we have a new dashboard with our traditional folders that we used to see in the older version, but we also have KPIs, mobile reports, paginated reports, Power BI desktop reports, and Excel workbooks. And these are all default categories that are when you upload a specific file type, it puts it in the appropriate category. So under the menu, New, you can create a new folder, of course, like we used to be able to do, but you can also create a KPI, a mobile report, paginated report, data set, or data source. The paginated report, data set, and data source are what was there before. What's new is the mobile report and KPI. You can upload files, which are the Power BI desktop reports and the Excel workbooks. And you can also determine which you're going to actually be able to view. And I can hide certain elements. I can show them. I can search for items. So just a few more bits and pieces that we didn't have before. And then under settings, we still have our My Subscriptions and site settings, but what's new is the branding. You can upload a brand package. Securities and schedules are pretty much the same thing. There are a few enhancements to the schedules, but we're not going to cover that today. So I mentioned portal branding. To change the look of the web portal, you need to develop a brand package, which consists of a colors JSON file, a logo PNG file, and a metadata XML file. The metadata XML file essentially defines the name of the brand package and contains the reference entry for both the colors JSON file and the logo PNG file. So here's an example of a custom brand for the web portal. As you can see, the logo has been changed and the color significantly changed. We have the Xbox logo and we've got the Xbox colors. So let's move on to some of the new data visualizations. We have the tree map, and the tree map is useful to show how parts contribute to a whole. Each rectangle represents the sum of a value and is sized according to the percentage of its value relative to the total values. And its value for the rectangles in the tree map are relative to the total values as well. The rectangles are positioned within the tree map with the largest category in the upper left of the parent rectangle and the smallest category in the lower right of the parent rectangle. Each rectangle can contain another collection of rectangles that break down its values in another category that represents a lower level in the hierarchy. We also have the new sunburst chart. It's a type of visualization that is a hybrid of a pie chart, using slices of a circle to represent the proportional value of a category to the total. However, a sunburst chart includes multiple circles to represent levels of a hierarchical data. Color is the highest level of a hierarchy chart in a series group is added to the chart, but it's not required. If no series group is defined, the innermost circle becomes the highest level of the hierarchy. Each lower level moves farther from the center of the circle, with the outermost circle as the lowest level of detail. Within each type of grouping, color, or circle, the slices are arranged in clockwise order, with the largest value appearing first and the smallest value appearing in the last slice. So the other new item is the KPI, and we're going to take a look at the KPI Designer. KPI Designer is essentially a configuration within the report builder. For those of you who are not familiar with a KPI is just simply a type of report content that you can add to the web portal to display metrics and trends at a glance. This content type uses colors to indicate the progress towards a goal and an optional visualization to show how the values trend over time. So I have a KPI on screen, and this KPI is also visible on my mobile device. So let's take a look at how this KPI was configured. So as you can see, I'm within the web portal still, and it's just a simple configuration screen. We can define what our value format is, whether it's just a general number, or currency, or a percentage, with or without decimals. We can define the currency that we're using, whether it's US dollars or any other currency around the world. And we can define what our value is, whether it's coming from a data set, which is a shared data set that's already been predefined, or we set it manually. In this particular case, we want it set from a data set because we want it updated on a regular basis without having to have manual intervention. So I've defined this data set already. And as you can see, my data set has some values, and I just chose a field out of this. It's a shared data set, and I use this data set in a variety of other different visualizations on the mobile reports. Then we can define what our goal is. Again, that goal can be manual, or it can be set through a data set. So in this particular case, I have a budget margin that goes along with my sales that I predefined in the data set, and it's in the same shared data set, and I can associate it with that particular value. Then I have a status. In this particular field, I've chosen my status to be the percentage that I've calculated for the margin versus actual. For the budget versus actual, I mean, of the margin. And I've defined how I would like that to be used. I could use a different type of visualization, and I can also pick a mobile report for my related content. Or I can use a custom URL for some other location for related content if it's not stored on the web portal. And again, this is clickable, although we can see it right here. We can click on it, and we get a larger view of it, and we can also see our related content, and that happens to be the mobile report that I created before. So, moving on to mobile reports, which we're just briefly talking about, we're going to see that after we take a look at the traditional paginator reports. Report Builder has been updated, as I mentioned, with some pretty significant updates as far as parameters are concerned. And we'll go into fairly large detail about the new parameter layout. So paginated reports are really just your traditional content type. And reporting services is actually especially well suited for this, and it's its original content type. Use this content type really when you need precise control over the layout, appearance, and behavior of each element in your report. And users can view a paginated report online or export it to another format, or receive it on a scheduled basis by subscribing to that format, and they can have that sent to their email or to a file system, depending on which version of reporting services you have. A paginated report can consist of a single page or hundreds of pages based on the data set associated with the report. And the need for this type of report continues to persist in most organizations, as well as other report content types that are now available on this reporting platform. So let's take a look at one of the paginated reports that I've already set up here. So I click on the triple dot and click Manage. And I can see the properties, and pretty much those are the same properties that we had in previous versions of reporting services. Where it differs is in the report builder itself. So it looks pretty much the same as far as we have the same categories for our report data, as well as our properties window and our row and column grouping windows. But we have this new parameters interface. Before, in our parameters, about the only thing we could configure was the parameter itself, but we also have the ability now to choose where that parameter is going to sit in the parameter window. All we could do before was say the order of it, and reporting services would take care of whether it was 3 parameters across or 2 parameters across. But now we can do it ourselves. We just drag our parameter and we define where we want to do it within the window. This little grid type interface, we can actually add or delete columns or rows, and that comes in really handy when you have reports with a large volume of parameters that you kind of want to group together. For example, if I had a report that had, you know, a list of categories, and I wanted to compare that category set for a date range to the same category set for a secondary date range, but I wanted to keep those date ranges together. So I would put the category drop down here for our first comparison with a from and to date beside it, and then below in the second row, I would put the second category drop down with a different from and to beside it, thus keeping the interface of the parameters very intuitive for a user. So in the parameters, you can still actually obtain your available values for drop-down through a data query. You can use a shared data set or a data set within the report itself. And the data sets are pretty much defined the same as far as you choose your data source, you put your query, whether it's a stored procedure or a SQL statement, define your fields, and you can give it new field names. You can change your options and your filters and your parameters. I primarily use parameters rather than filters within the report itself. So we can preview this report, and you'll see that the parameters are formatted the way I wanted them to. And if I wanted to change this to and move it over to this location, which is in the third column of the parameters, and I run it again, you'll notice that it's switched again. And you can still do drill throughs on the report where you can click on a value and it would launch a new report. So what else is different about this is the export feature. We have a couple of new export options, which is a data feed, PowerPoint, and XML. We still have the PDF and Word and the common delimited file and the HTML. So that's our traditional paginated report. Now let's move on to mobile reports. So along with the new mobile-friendly report, the mobile-friendly web portal, you will also have the new mobile report publisher application. Mobile report publisher is used to design and develop and deploy reports that are structured for mobile viewing on many various devices. In early 2015, Microsoft acquired DataZen software to make it easier to deploy reports to the mobile devices, regardless of the operating system or form factor. This content type is best when you need a touch-responsive and easy-to-read reports that are displayed on smaller screens, communicate key metrics effectively at a glance, and support drill-through to view supporting details. In SQL Server 2016, users can view both paginated and mobile reports through the web portal interface of the on-premise report server. And one of the main advantages of this tool is that when presenting on a mobile device, the tool deploys reports that are flexible when viewed on various devices. That means that on a small device like a phone, the report will adjust the various report objects for the best viewing on that device. If viewing on a larger size screen, such as on a tablet, then the report will again adjust for the best viewing experience for the end user. Of course, if viewing on a computer, an even different view is going to be generated. So let's take a look at Mobile Report Publisher. I think you will find that the tool is pretty easy to work with, and the opening window has several main components included. So I'm going to open up one of my mobile reports. It's going to be my category sales and budget report. Again, click on the triple dot and click Manage. And now you see that I have my category sales and budget graph in my Mobile Report Publisher Designer screen. I'm just going to shrink the graph down a bit so we can talk a little bit about the grid. So some basic settings is you've got a design grid with cells in rows and columns, a chart, gauge, map, and navigation visualization toolbox on the left, a viewing type and formatting area, and a toolbar, of course, for being able to save. So under settings, we can set our report title, the currency, the fiscal year start for anything that is time valued, what our first day of the week is, whether it's a Sunday, Monday, or any day in the rest of the week, and what our effective date is. This is really good for time-based reporting. We can also enable whether data is cached or not and whether it should be encrypted when we're storing on the client. We can preview what we have as well. And if we hadn't set up data yet, it would actually use sample data for preview. So let's go back to the layout. So this is the master grid, and the master grid by default is 5 rows and 10 columns. We can switch to a tablet layout or a phone layout. But first we're going to define it on our master layout, and then we'll move to the tablet and the phone. If we don't define a tablet or a phone layout, it'll actually use the master layout and still display it on your phone. We'll actually see an example of that later. You can also define your color palette, whether you want to accent it or not. So as you can see, I chose a navy background, and it shows blue in the background and changes the look and feel of my graph. But if I choose accent yes, it changes the look and feel of my graph, but puts the background back to default. So I'm just going to switch back to my default color and no accent. And there's a lot of different color choices that are available. So we take a look at our visualization. So essentially, the gauges and graphs and whatnot are really just a drag and drop exercise. If we wanted to add another element on here, we can. We can have multiple elements. One thing to keep in mind is how we're laying things out. On the master, how do we want it to look like by default on devices? But we can also change how we have them look on a tablet versus a phone. So if a phone screen is pretty small, you may not want to have too much side by side. You may want to go a little more vertically and have your elements maybe a little bit smaller, or not even have all the same elements on your screen. But we're just going to take a look at the master. I'm just going to delete this object that I dropped on. You can resize by dragging the corner of your visualization. So in this particular case, I'm going to make it the full grid size. And then I can configure it. So what I want to do first is actually choose my data. I've already given it a title. I can turn accent on or off, adjust my Y axis, and whatnot. So, and I can actually create a drill through target so that if I click on the graph, I can go to a custom URL or a different mobile report. So I'm going to select my data. So by default, there's sample data. I can add data from an Excel workbook or from the report server, and choosing the report server, I select the report server, and that's already predefined. And I would go and select one of my shared data sets. So you would actually use Report Designer or Report Builder to create your shared data sets before you even build your mobile reports. So in this case, I actually have selected 2 shared data sets, and you can see them here. And I can click refresh and get a refreshed set of data, just in case something had changed. So I'm going to use the category sales versus budget shared data. And I'm going to use the SBU or category column. And I don't have a lot of options for the category column because it's really just an attribute. And then we've got the main series. The main series is coming out of the same shared data set, and I choose which field that I want to use and define the format that I'd like to use and the aggregation. So in this particular case, I'm going to sum the values, but I could average or count or do a min or max. And then I want a comparison series because I chose a comparison chart. So in this case, I'm actually going to use the year-to-date budget sales so that I can compare actuals to budget. I'm going to use the same aggregation that I use on the sales field. So I can preview my report, and as you can see, it's showing real values coming from my data set. And if I click on them to simulate a touch interface, a little pop-up window pops up showing the values of both my sales and my budget sales, which is my comparative graph. And if I run it down, it'll continue to change. So now that I've previewed it, I can publish it to our web portal so that it can be visible to those who are viewing the web portal or those who are actually syncing to the web portal with their mobile device. So we can do this because it's an existing report. I could just click Save should I have made any changes, or if I want to save it as new, if it was a new report, I can choose to save it locally in case I want to work on it later and I'm not ready to publish, or I can save it to the server. When I save it to the server name is the server that we had already selected when we first went into Report Publisher, and you didn't see that in this demo because I'd already selected that and set it up. We can define what our report name is and the location in which we want to store it. So in this particular case, we can choose folder and we can put it anywhere that we want. Because I've saved it already, I'm not going to save it as a new one. Oh, one other thing I did mention in the design that we could change layouts or define different layouts for our tablet or phone. So let's take a look at the tablet layout, and you'll notice that by default it's empty. But because we've already created a control or a visualization on our master, it's actually available for us to select. So if we created multiple visualizations here on our master, they would all be available. We could choose all of them or none of them. So in this particular case, I'm going to choose this one, and then I'm going to expand out and use most of my tablet screen. And if I wanted to add new visualizations to the master, I could, and then make them available for this. And then for our phone, we can do the same thing. So our phone, can be a little longer and narrower. Okay, so we also have two other mobile reports that have different visualizations. The category, and I could have combined them all in one, but because I'm very focused on delivering what my audience would be is they would mostly use mobile phones. I may not have made a single mobile report for that, or perhaps I have different permissions on the mobile reports and that only certain people would see certain mobile reports. And there's a whole bunch of reasons about why you design and layout, and it really depends on who your audience is. So in the year-to-date sales to budget, I have a different visualization example here. And as you can see, I'm actually viewing it in my web portal, but I can also view it on my tablet or mobile device. And we'll actually take a look at that shortly. And then we have another visualization for those thinking that all we're doing is looking at, graphs and trends and stuff. We can also look at a grid format of data. Now we want to be really careful about how much data we have loaded up, because we have to remember that these are mobile devices with limited data storage. So you want to kind of look at especially right now, keeping the number of rows that you're using to under 100,000. And then just do some testing with your mobile devices that you're supporting to see whether that number has a higher threshold for you or not. So next we're going to have a look at the Power BI mobile app. Now, I don't have a video camera, so I can't show you my phone, but I'm going to show you some screenshots that actually have come from my iPhone. So Power BI Mobile is a free app that is available for the Windows phone or tablet. There's an Android version as well as an iOS version from iTunes. So it's essentially being able to create you create your personalized dashboards within the web portal and be able to view those specific personal dashboards and your reports on your device. And once your device has been synced, you can view those reports offline as well. So even if you're online on the internet, but you can't get to your web portal because it's behind a firewall and only accessible while you're on Wi-Fi within the office, you can still be able to view your reports offline or disconnected from your report server. The Power BI mobile app also lets you connect to your Power BI server. So if you're using Power BI in the cloud, you can also connect to that and see your Power BI reports that are sitting up there. And essentially, you can actually interact with your data with that touch interface just like any other app. And so that what I showed you earlier where you run, I ran my cursor over my graph, you would just run your finger over the graph, you would tap on a graph to go through and drill through, and it would open up a new report. And it's all within the same app, so you don't end up with an app per report. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. So in this particular example is a screenshot actually taken last night while it was refreshing. So you can see at the top that it's telling you whether it's refreshed and when it was refreshed, when it was done refreshing. You can see the folders, the KPI, and the 3 mobile reports. Now you're not going to see your Power BI desktop reports or your paginated reports or your Excel workbooks on this particular app, but at least you can see your mobile reports and your KPIs. So here's the example of that graph that we were looking at in Mobile Report Publisher. And I've actually captured a screenshot while I was running my thumb across the screen to be able to capture the pop-up that showed the larger details for that graph. This is the other graph that I was showing you on the web portal, and as you can see, it looks pretty much the same. There is a refresh option here as well, so if you happen to be connected to the server, you can refresh from the server. And here's the list view. And it has a horizontal scroll bar, so if your lists are wide, you can scroll back and forth with the touch interface. So I also have some examples, also taken from my phone, of some more complicated reports. And you can tell that it was actually just refreshed at 7:02, and it actually tells you it was refreshed just now. So there's a couple of KPIs. And I was mentioning before, we have some mobile reports that have a lot of data visualizations. A little hard to read on the smaller device, a little easier to read when you're on a tablet. If you end up, scrolling, having mobile reports that aren't showing on the same screen, you just use your touch interface to scroll up and down. Again, here's another type of graph with a pop-up to show more details, and this happens to be a value over time. And then we also have another example of a specific mobile report where we clicked on one and we saw a larger screen of values, and you can see all the different types of visualizations that have been put in, including a grid visualization. This is just an example of the sheer amount of types of charts and gauges that you can incorporate within your mobile reports. And I have one last example of a mobile report where we've got the vertical view and the horizontal view of that same report. And as you can see, things have adjusted. So this particular gauge report doesn't actually look as nice on a horizontal view. You have your text overlapping the gauge piece of it, but it's still visual and you still see the numbers. So this isn't the end. I'm going to show you one more thing, and it's actually the Power BI desktop report. So I have one here, and I have an Excel workbook. So I uploaded the Excel workbook just by using the upload function. Then I browsed my local drive and grabbed an Excel workbook. If I clicked on that, it would open up in Excel. The same goes for the Power BI desktop report. When I click on that, I can open it up and it'll launch in my Power BI desktop application, which I downloaded from the Power BI server. And I created this report actually using an Excel worksheet. I could connect it to just about any data source, including any SQL data source, any data source out in the cloud, Power BI hosted service, and a lot of different other options, including a website. So in this particular case, it's again a very similar design interface as far as we can have grids and graphs, and it's drag and drop, very similar to the report publisher for mobile reporting. And we can define which fields that we want to show for each element. We can add new pages, or we can view data. So if I wanted to add a new visualization similar to Mobile Report Publisher, I can grab a visualization and drag it and drop. Grab a visualization and drop it on the screen. There we go. And then I can define what values that I want to see for this particular chart. Same as the grid, I can also show what values that I want to see. And the order of that shows depends on when I've clicked them. So I'm going to unclick the values because I want to see it in a specific order. I want to see date, then customer, then product, then quantity, then sales. And you'll see that it goes in order there. And then I can resize them so that they fit. And then I just save it back. Yep. So that's the end of the Power BI desktop. It was just a quick preview. There's a lot more features to get into, but we can do that another time. JZ, you said there was a couple of questions?
Yeah, first question is, can we deploy these reports in SharePoint 2010 that you showed earlier?
You can deploy your paginator reports. Definitely the paginator reports in SharePoint 2010 because they're RDL files. It's a link. It's an RDL file or it's a link to your reporting server. I haven't tried it as to whether there'd be any issues if you uploaded it to a report library or not.
Right. The next question, can we give filters parameters in Power BI desktop?
Oh, yes, you can if you're using like a query that would do that. Or if you wanted to add a filter to your Excel worksheet, yes. That's it. All right. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for your questions. And
there's one more question.
Yeah.
Can the data be visualized for Canada or worldwide in add-in required? Is that add-in required?
No, I'm assuming that relates to possibly using a map in a report because the old report builder, their maps was limited to US, and you had to find an add-in for that. But no, you should be able to use a worldwide map for that.
Right. That's good.
Well, thanks very much, everyone. We will post a copy of this webinar online, and you should be able to have access to it. Thank you again, and look forward to see you at our next month webinar. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.